All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is going to be a fantastic night. We've got lots of things to give away and lots of music to get to. But to get us started off, Ian, can you play us something on that crazy instrument of yours?
Let's find out.
All right.
Yeah, so this is a piece called Aftershocks. so much.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much.
Tell us, wow, where to begin? Tell us about your instrument, I guess first would be the first thing to ask.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is something I used to see pictures of and just think, what a stupid, ridiculous instrument. Like, it's clearly just for show, like, what could you possibly do with it that you would really need two necks, And as I started to basically get more into playing solo acoustic in terms of format, playing without a band, without being in the studio and being able to overdub different parts, to layer different instruments together, and just trying to find a way to still kind of basically play what I was hearing in my head, which I tend to hear layers, rather than one really complicated thing, like kind of relationships of multiple different parts. So basically when I was at college, I and having always grown up in very rural areas and not having a lot of people to play with, I always had to kind of figure out, like, anything I wanted to hear, I had to figure out how I was going to play that myself,
Right.
And so eventually that led to me, thinking like, maybe it would be useful to have some extra strings to work with, and basically I picked it up in a store one day when I finally found one, and within like 6 seconds I was just like, this is it. This is the rest of my life here,
So you got 12 strings at the top.
Yeah.
What's the tuning?
I always have to think about that because I just kind of think of scale degree, and I just, I just like to tune it like in a way that sounds interesting to me, and then just kind of throw out everything I know about the fretboard shapes and just kind of start from scratch, and each tuning kind of gives you its own little world. So I actually use different tunings on almost every song.
Yeah.
This one, without the capos, would be like D sharp, A sharp, D sharp, F, I think, A sharp, D sharp. And
then you've got a partial capo.
Then I've got a partial capo on the third fret. So
on just 2 strings, 3 strings.
3 strings, yeah. So
Okay.
like the fourth and the third and the second.
Okay.
And so that gives this sound if I just play the open strings. So it's like a root 5th, flat 3rd, 11, flat 7, 1.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I think of it. And then the bottom neck is sort of like dad gad in D sharp, but with a 9 on the top. So without the capo, it would be an F on top.
Right.
So D sharp, A sharp, D sharp, G sharp, A sharp, F. But then capoed up a whole step.
Right.
So,
but those are standard guitar strings? I mean, you don't have like bass strings on that lower one.
right, yeah. Just kind of, I think having a bigger body, you get a little bit more.
It does kind of sound more
bass
boomy than normal.
Sure,
It gives us so much wonderful bottom end.
Yeah.
Great, and so you're doing 2 different capos, and that you were pretty much running straight. You weren't running through much of your
No, just
effects or
a
anything
little
like that?
reverb, and that's it. It's pretty much, when we amplify this, I try to just have it sound like it sounds when I'm practicing, which is usually unplugged.
Yeah.
So just
Now, where are you from?
originally from New Hampshire. I grew up in a real rural area, like I said, where there weren't very many people to play with, but had a lot of time to just explore, things on my own. And then later, my family moved to Northern California, kind of in the foothills of the Sierras. So,
Absolutely fantastic. Did you have guitar lessons as you were growing up? Did you have any formal training?
a little bit. I would say like kind of 90 to 95% of my journey in music has been self-guided, if I could use that word, or just kind
Did you
of.
play anything else? I mean, did you
Yeah,
have
so
piano lessons or something like that?
yeah, I did. Starting when I was 5, actually, I took Suzuki piano lessons for 2 years, where you learn just completely by ear.
That would make perfect sense. Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And then when they tried to teach me to learn how to read, I had a rough time.
Yeah.
And still working on that. I can read, but it's still like my ear's always been stronger. So that was the first thing. And then the other thing that caused me to stop piano lessons was at one of my piano recitals, they hired, it was like a Christmas recital, and they hired some guy to come in with a snare drum and a cymbal and just like do an occasional roll and like hit the crash. And that just like blew my mind. That was like the coolest thing I'd ever heard in my life, you know, as a 7-year-old. So after that, I was like drums for like 10 years.
Well, and there's so much percussion elements in what you're doing. I can see how that is all kind of coming together.
Yeah, I really felt like when I found this, you know, I had later picked up bass and guitar and stuff and did a lot just in my little home studio, like layering stuff together so I could kind of get a band sound. You know, when I found this was like the first instrument that just really, really clicked for me, like on a deep, deep level, where it was much more intuitive to kind of get across that kind of feeling. You know, not that it sounds like a drummer and a bass player and a guitar player all together, but like kind of being able to achieve a little bit of that functionality of you know, having some kind of hint of a percussive groove and some kind of bass line and so the harmonies there, and hopefully trying to get the melody to pop out of there somehow. So.
Well, and that, I mean, watching you, it just looks effortless, but I know how much control of technique that takes to be able to do the percussive elements and the tapping and get those to be in any way balanced.
Sure.
So that's a tough little mix. How did you get into the tapping end of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, everything that I'm doing is honestly been completely driven by just trying to like follow where I feel like a song wants to go, and just kind of following my ear. And if I feel like that melody wants to happen while this other bass line is happening, then, you know, throughout my time with the double neck, it's been just a process of like, okay, how the heck am I going to do this? You know, maybe like that, and I use my thumb, you know, just trying to find a way to get those notes out that I'm hearing, and so it's all been completely composition driven, and for better or worse. I mean, I've never been super inspired to just sit down and be like, I'm going to work on technique. You know, it's always like trying to get a song to be doing what it feels like it wants to do better, and it's an ongoing process. I mean, I feel like I'm that far along with it, you know, and it is, you know, with the double neck especially, it's kind of a new area of research, you could say, so there's not a lot out there to kind of learn from so much.
I really don't even know of many players that even play a double neck, much less use them simultaneously like you're doing in incorporating it all together. So I really don't know of anybody else that's kind of doing that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
the tapping and the tunings, well, that's kind of Michael Hedges and a lot of the guys in that stream are just putting together such beautiful stuff, but I haven't ever seen it with a double neck.
Yeah, so there's a few other guys out there, but not many of us, for sure. Yeah,
wow.
And everyone, the cool thing is everyone has their own way of doing it, you know, and that was a big realization for me. You know, I went to Berklee College of Music for a while, and before I had found the double neck and really figured out what my direction was, and that was a tough experience. I got a lot out of it. But I hit a point where I kind of realized like all my favorite musicians were like kind of weird oddballs. They were like one of a kind, you know, whether it's like Bobby McFerrin or Michael Manring, the bass player, who's like one of the first guys to make the bass like a solo concert instrument, and you know, Bela Fleck, you know, I mean, all these people just really carved out their own world of, you know, their own way of doing things. And so that opened me up more to, instead of thinking about like how can I be better than everyone else at the same thing that everyone's doing, you know, or the same thing that a large group of guitarists are doing, like instead thinking, you know, what is it that I uniquely feel that I have to contribute to the world? It's different, you know, that it can be valuable just because it's unique. And I think everyone has that, you know, and always encouraging people to think about it that way, and you know, I think that's a good way to lead yourself forward, you know.
Well, it is so it's so odd and wonderful that you're actually here. This was how this basically all started. Is literally about 2 weeks ago. Someone put one of your videos on their Facebook page. I saw it and said, wow, who in the world is this guy? And, you know, we became Facebook friends. You know, I got on your Facebook page and started checking you out. And then a little bit few days went by, and then I saw on your Facebook page, hey, looking forward to being in Nashville. And I thought, what? And so I quickly sent off a few emails, and you graciously made time in your schedule to be with us. You're doing a concert tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Where's that at?
Belcourt Taps. I think that's
Belcourt
how you pronounce it. I haven't been there before, so Belcourt
But
Taps.
you're traveling with another guitarist?
No, actually a local musician named Tom Shinnes. He plays a harp guitar
Right.
and I think cello as well. He's a really multi-talented guy.
So y'all are just meeting for this event?
Yeah, it's our
Okay.
first chance to do a concert together. So we'll kind of each do a set, and it's similar genre, if you want to call that, in terms of it being acoustic, instrumental, original music. So yeah, looking forward to getting to play in Nashville for the first time. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, well, gosh, it's a thrill having you here. As any of you have questions, please type them in. And Sam, our wonderful new person handling the chat tonight, will put up your questions, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Sam, just always have a question up there for me if somebody puts something up there. I think we've answered quite a few of them already for various things. So tell us about some of the gear that you're running through then here. We haven't really got through that. Do you want to play a song that involves some of that
let's
stuff
start
first?
with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the other weird instrument I play. This is a kalimba for anyone that's unfamiliar, and the only instrument I know of that you play basically entirely with your thumbs, which just sounds like the worst idea ever. But I've really fallen in love with the sound of it, and this particular kalimba is a brand new one that a guy in France built for me, and so this is a pretty new composition.
What's
here.
the name of it?
I don't have a name yet, so always open to title ideas.
I love it. I tell you, wow, that is so crazy creative. I know we have some questions here, and we need to give away some stuff. Okay, give us the short tour of what's on your board there.
Yeah, so this has been like kind of a 5-year project of, it's sort of, I guess in a way, the natural extension of what I was trying to do with the double neck, in terms of like just getting more of those parts happening simultaneously that I was hearing, and having done a lot of the overdubbing stuff in the studio, doing CDs that way where I lay down drums and then bass and then guitars.
Yeah.
This is sort of a live version of that, so as I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, it's it's a couple of loopers. I actually have 6 different loops that I can independently control, and it's all live. I don't do any pre-recorded stuff.
So you're using, I see the two main units are the Boss RC300.
Yeah,
The main
so
loop
they're
stations.
synced to each other. I actually can have some loops not be synced, so they can be a different length, or totally just kind of rotating against the other loops. With 6 loops, I can add an infinite number of overdubs, like layers to each loop. So there's no limit in terms of how much you can add, but in terms of being able to bring parts in and out, or stop and start things, I have 6 kind of subgroups. So basically I use like a digital mixer. It's like controlled by an iPad to feed everything, to get a good sound on the acoustic instruments, just in a good, representative acoustic tone. But then we can create a separate kind of submix that we feed into the looper. And normally, for a lot of the shows, I have my wife with me who runs the sound from the back of the room. So she'll be like panning things, left to right, so you can kind of hear all those individual parts instead of everything just kind of being squashed on top of itself, and riding the levels. So like right here, I've got the bass, sort of the bass and chord line on one set of outputs, and then I've got all the Kalimba stuff up here. So it's nice having more than one loop. I'm really trying to find ways of like pushing out the edges of that box that looping can sometimes put you in terms of like things just being very static. And on some songs, I'm actually even like transposing to different keys on the fly. I can have a pedal to have it go somewhere else harmonically. And
you were using the Boss Octaver, OC3, the super octave on that to get some of the lower tones.
Yeah, which is really nice. I like this particular one because it's got a little crossover in it. So if you want, you can have every note that you play be doubled, an octave lower. Or you can set the crossover at a varying place wherever you like it, so that, like I was doing in that piece, just kind of like the low notes will have the sub-octave and the high notes don't, so you can get a clean chord, because obviously if you have an octave pedal on a chord,
because I was wondering how you were able to do that, and that would make sense with that. And you're playing a fretless guitar.
Yeah, it's a fretless nylon string guitar, so it's a very different sound than the steel string percussive stuff. And this to me is really nice because like when we sing or speak, we're not speaking in these like fixed pitches the way frets would tend to lock you in. It's of course difficult with intonation and playing in tune, but there's so much expression that you can get. I guess in a similar way that maybe like a blues guitarist would do a lot of bending. It's just sort of a different way to have some of that natural expression of being able to slide into a note or off of it.
Fantastic. Well, let's let Ian take a break for just a second, and we will let's give some stuff away. Our good friends over at Kaiser Capo's, we will need a winner. So we have our top people working on this to get the appropriate winner. There we go. Okay. This is a partial capo. Actually,
with the K lever.
With the K lever.
That thing's really cool.
So kind of explain to us what all this can do?
Yeah, so I think I might have one here.
Someone's about to win this.
So the K lever, well, first of all, a partial capo, for anyone that's unfamiliar with that, means that instead of it barring all the strings at once, you can just have it bar certain strings. So I think that one's a shortcut. So depending on which side of the neck you put it on, like I've got one here, it doesn't have the K lever, but this is capoing. It's leaving the high E string free, and then the next 3, it's capoing, and then the 5th and the 6th are free. But you could also flip it around and put it on from this side, and it would get 5, 4, 3, and leave the top 2 open. So
and explain how you can use the K lever on it.
Yeah, so the K lever is this little silver thing here. I modified this one so it's not working the same way that one will, but basically there's a little like piece of rubber that lever will push down, so you can temporarily, while this is on the guitar, you could temporarily push that lever down and like it's like having another finger. You know, you can have have it actually.
But it's just
fret
affecting the
one
that's
string.
not that's not being pushed down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cool thing that I love about Kaisers too is that the rubber is thick enough in this dimension that you can, as you can see here, I cut them different ways, so you can make your own partial capo that capos other strings. So
someone is about to win this. The winner of this beautiful Kaiser K-lever partial capo shortcut is Nacogdoches Bob. Nacogdoches Bob, you have just won a Kaiser capo. Hey Bob, send me your information at service@mightyoakmusic.com, your shipping address, screen name. I know you, Bob, but send me your what you won, stuff like that. That helps me so I can figure that stuff out too. We are into a new month, and we are going to be talking about jazz in the coming weeks, but I wanted to catch Ian while he was in town, so that's why we're on Wednesday night instead of our normal Tuesday night, so that we could have Ian with us, and so we're thrilled to do that. So last weekend we ended our sale on the flat-picking guitar resources, but I did have a few left over. So if you're interested, I believe it's the middle button underneath your Ustream window. If you're interested in still getting in on the flat-picking guitar resources from last week with Grammy-nominated flat-picking guitarist Tim May, of which we are in a completely different galaxy musically than we were 7 days ago with Tim, you can get these resources. Click that middle button, and that'll get you right to them. There's jam tracks that come along with this. Great resource. Scales, folded scales, great for bluegrass and all that sort of stuff. If you're interested in more bluegrass stuff, we do have a real book, the Real Bluegrass book that Hal Leonard has put out now. Dan Flinner, I think, is the one who compiled this. That is the gray button, I believe, underneath the Ustream window. And the other one, the new one that we have, only a few brave souls have signed up for this one yet. This is Tommy Emmanuel's new Christmas, fingerstyle Christmas resource. I believe it's called All I Want for Christmas. Accurate note-for-note transcriptions of Tommy's arrangements of some great Christmas classics. Some of it's crazy stuff. Some of it is just really good, accessible, lyrical arrangements of Silent Night and Joy to the World, a lot of these great songs. If you're interested, check that out. I believe that's the rightmost button underneath your Ustream window. So make advantage of all that stuff. Check out our store. We got all kinds of great stuff over there, and that helps pay the bills for all of this craziness. While we're talking about Kaiser, let me give away one more thing. The good folks at Kaiser offered to give away some other capos as well, so I don't have those with me, but we are going to give away a capo to another person, Rich Litch. Rich Litch, you have just won a Kaiser Quick Change Capo, and they come in multiple colors, so choose your color, blue, red, green, whatever, and send it to me at service@Mighty Oak Music with your shipping address, and I'll get that to Kaiser, and they will send it out to you. Hey, congratulations, Rich and Nacogdoches Bob, for all that stuff. Gosh, it's already 7:38. We need to get going. If you guys have any more questions, we had so many questions. Sam, get me back to the questions if you can. Electric Axe 7 is asking, what kind of strings do you use?
Whatever I can find in the garbage can, you know. It's too expensive, you know.
I imagine it is.
I've been using elixirs just because my hands just like kill strings after like half an hour, and this takes like an hour and a half if I'm like going to clean it up too. So times two, you know,
Right.
it's nice to not have to change them as often, and the squeak factor, you know, is much less. So they work for me.
And then the nylon strings, just regular nylon strings.
Yeah, D'Addario.
Yeah.
Been experimenting with different D'Addario nylon strings. They have like so many different kinds, but.
Wow. Scroll back, Sam. Bunk Squawk is asking, how many hours a day are you working at music on some level? And how many of those hours are spent working on songs or techniques for the double neck? Lastly, wow, so many questions. Lastly, how long did it take for you to feel comfortable in your playing style on the double neck?
Oh, well, I'll take that last one first. I mean, that I would say really within like a month and a half, I had sort of, I still find things every time I sit down with the double neck, but I remember a piece happening like, really early on. I mean, really from the first 6 seconds, it was just like, oh yeah, this is right. Of course, there's a process of kind of starting to have a sense of like how I was going to approach it. I knew I wanted to treat it as like one instrument, not like two separate things. So yeah, I mean, a couple months it was starting to be the general type of thing that you're hearing now. It was really bad at first, but
if someone wanted to get started with some of the tapping techniques that you're using, do you know of a good resource, or if you don't know of a good resource, or how would they just start to try and find some sounds?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
a different technique. It's a physical technique, and you got to kind of practice the physicality of it. I know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of like a website. There may be stuff out there. All I know is my experience, and the way it was for me was, I think having played drums for a long time as my main instrument was really important. I think for guitarists in general, sometimes rhythm is like not the number one thing that gets focused on, and it really should be, I think, for any instrument. Like if you're playing anything other than maybe classical or something that's really rubato, like time is just everything, I feel. And so honestly, and I've been finding like a lot of my favorite musicians I look up to the most, like Michael Brecker could really play drums, like hardly anyone knows that, but same Chick Corea, like tons of people. It's a really good way to just develop a foundation. And I know it might seem weird or crazy or not feasible, but like really, if you can, get yourself up for like actually being like, okay, I'm gonna become an intermediate drummer, or whatever you can do, it'll help your guitar playing so much. But as far as like specific to the instrument, I think. Just the biggest thing is just to be really open. Like I just kind of threw out everything I knew about guitar and just said, like, kind of pretended it was a different instrument, which in this case it kind of is. And just like, how might this be played if it had been around for, forever, like the piano has or violin, and just to be really open-minded and then just spend time playing, and I encourage that more than like trying to look to a specific artist and copy what they're doing. I mean, I guess that can be a good way to learn, but you want to find your own way of doing things. So I think just really like try composing something, just spend time on the instrument, see what sounds good to you, and just pay attention to that kind of inner feeling or inner ear of like what you feel like the song wants to do, and that will guide everything. I think that's more useful than trying to like really specifically like work on a certain technique just as something that's removed from any musical context. That's how it worked for me. But
improvisation, and there's improvisation in a jazz and rock setting in that sense, but improvisation in the sense of creating something, letting the music that's inside of you get out as with as least resistance as possible.
And I think it's okay if it sounds bad at first too. It's not like, it may sound like nothing at first, and just being willing to like know that there's something there and keep kind of digging and chasing after it. It will eventually sound better and better, I think.
You get better at creating, at just starting with a blank canvas and starting to do it. It feels clunky at first. It feels like everything you're doing is just so simple and so basic and so babyish and whatever. But you get better, and it's just like a toddler learning how to walk. You get better and better at making the choices, and your ear being able to find the choices that you want to make musically on your instrument. And it takes time and practice and effort, just like it does on the technical end of things. It takes time and effort and practice on the creative end of things to be able to create effectively.
Totally, yeah. And I guess that ties in with the other question I was supposed to get to there, which is how many hours or whatever. And the way it went for me on the double neck, like the first, 4 or 5 years that I was playing that, I don't know if it was every single day that I would that this would happen, but I remember most of the time, every time I picked it up, it would be like some new idea would pop out, and I'd kind of be chasing that or working on that or developing that until 2, 3 in the morning or something, and it was so it was kind of simultaneously by default working on technique, but in the context of some new song, and then it's like lately the past 5 years. I mean, that still happens a lot, but as I'm starting to perform more, it's shifted a little bit more toward like, okay, I have these song ideas now. Let's like try and really get them polished up a little bit more, or figure out how to make them speak better. Dynamics and getting the right line to pop out, and metronome practice. Just really trying to hear every single 16th note or 16th note triplet like all the time so that everything's locked in. And
especially with looping, you got to be so accurate with looping.
Yeah, it's such a good thing. I mean, it's harder than playing with live musicians, because I think when you're playing with someone, if you and I were playing, we'd maybe I'd be a little early and you'd be a little late, or vice versa, but we'd kind of like subconsciously meet in the middle. There's kind of this group averaging thing that happens, and with a looper, that's not
much
there.
Less forgiving.
It's not listening to you. It's not compromising at all, and whatever you put in, it spits it back exactly. And if you're layering stuff with the same sound, you really hear like those flams if it's not right on. So it's been a good motivator and kind of check of my progress with that, and still working on it.
Scott Hawley is asking, Ian, tell us about some of your musical influences. Any other guitarists that you kind of listen to and think pick some ideas from? Yeah,
I try really hard to whatever I hear to not do that. I'm sure it gets in there anyway. Things that you hear and you just love, you feel on a deep level. I mean, for me, Pat Metheny is like a million times better than anyone else out there right now, not just guitarist, but just as a composer and musician. So that one's been hard to get over. Like I feel like I have a hard time not going to some of the things that he does when I start soloing, especially on like a hollow body guitar. But so I mean, there's a huge long list of people I love listening to, but I try to like learn from that at more of a conceptual level, and not like I'm gonna try and develop a harmonic language similar to Keith Jarrett or something, but instead just kind of like, wow, okay, this guy developed his own way of doing things, like he took this instrument that hasn't been used in this kind of context before and made it work, and that as an idea makes me think like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can someday get to where I can really play through like non-diatonic chord changes on an open tune double neck somehow, So, I mean, as far as influences, really, it's been like things like the way I grew up and where I grew up, being outside a lot, and the whole thing of having a lot of time to just explore the outdoors and sort of having to entertain myself, that has had a way bigger impact on my music, I think, or what comes out, than like a certain artist, just that thing of, because to me the music doesn't come from me, in the same way that when you go out hiking in the mountains or something, you don't go, oh, look at these mountains I created, It's like, wow, look what was here, and I didn't realize it before, and that's what this has been for me. All the music I'm doing, like, it feels like just kind of discovering something rather than creating it. So those are some influences, but as far as other musicians that I love, besides...
Who are some guys that are doing some creative stuff that you look at?
Yeah, I mean, there's, since I know I won't have time to mention that many people, I mean, there's some people I would sort of consider my peers, or people sort of my generation that I really dig. One guy is named Matoshi Kasako. He's plays a full-on like orchestral harp with the pedals and everything, and he plays jazz on it, like his own little subgenre, and just such a beautiful composer and player. There's a guy named Manu Delago who's actually playing with Bjork now. I got to do a little tour of the U.S. with him when he was coming over here for the first time. He plays a hung drum, which is sort of like a reverse steel pan. It sounds a little bit similar to steel drums, but you play it with your hands, and he actually plays like 2 or 3 at once so that he can be harmonically diverse. But, another guy that just sort of like no one else, I mean, other people try to do that, but he's like a million times better at it than anyone.
Yeah.
He's got his own sound and a great composer as well. Matthew Shaning is a great electric cellist that I've played with a bit, who's one of the best like at the looping thing, just from a sonic and technical perspective. He's just got it so together, and those are a few people. And then I love like all the cutting edge New York jazz stuff that's going on, like Donnie McCaslin and Mark Juliana and Kurt Rosenwinkel, Adam Rogers, Chris Potter, I totally love. I can go on way too long. But next.
Fantastic. Fezler is asking another question, then we'll get out of here. Fezler is asking, are there any other instruments that you'd like to tackle?
Oh, I feel like I've gotten myself like enough to work on for a while. Like I'm trying to maybe now focus on actually getting good at some of them. But I do have a custom double neck that's been in the works for like 6 years. That's going to be not just like a nicer version of this, but actually have some real functionally different things about it that will allow me to like switch tunings on the fly, and it's got some crazy like 22nd century sustaining technology in it with these electromagnets and stuff that Paul Vaux invented, and so that will almost be like a new instrument, but still will be able to use my whatever stuff I've come up with on the double neck so far.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, as we're kind of coming into the home stretch, Ian, we'll get you to do one more song if you can. But I wanted to also talk about some of the things that you're using over here.
Sure.
Is the LR Bags, the Session DIs.
Yeah, these guys here.
And the good folks over at LR Bags have offered to provide us one. So one of you lucky viewers, sorry, none of you guys here in the audience are about to win a Session DI, an LR Bags Session DI. Sorry. But one of you guys online is about ready to win it. And that's kind of their newest version. I have the Venue DI.
Yeah, that's a great one too.
And there's the studio one, and then this is the session one, and it has a couple of different extra functions on it. I think there's compression on there.
There's a multi-band compressor, which I don't know anyone else that's done that. So it's compressing the lows and the mids and the highs independently. Yeah.
And so you're using that on which guitar?
Both actually, on the double necks. Like I have one for each neck, so I have 2 outputs. I've actually ended up using it mainly just as like a nice, clean, direct box with independent volume control to dial in the 2 necks. But
it's a very small. I don't know if we've got a tight enough shot on it, but it's these small, kind of almost brownish, greenish unit right there. And it works as a great little DI. It doesn't have a tuner on it.
No.
Yeah. But it's just compression. There's a little bit of saturation to fill out your sound and some EQ. A great little unit. Someone is just about to win this. The winner of this is Case Notes. Case Notes. You have just won an LR Bag Session DI. Great acoustic instrument processor, but you haven't won anything until you send me your information at service@mightyoakmusic.com, and you got to claim it. If you don't claim it, then I'll give it away next week. I promise. We'll give it away to somebody else. So you need to send me your information, service@mightyoakmusic.com. Send me your shipping information, phone number, screen name, what you want, things like that. While we're stopped and as Ian's getting ready, we will not have a lesson next week because I'm going to be out of town. We'll be on the week after that, back on our normal Tuesday live lesson time. So we will be back on Tuesdays 2 weeks from now. For our next live lesson, and we'll be starting talking to some jazz concepts for the following part of the month. What are you going to play for us?
So this is a piece called Butter 2. This is one of the tracks off the album we just finished. Came out in August, and
that's right. So tell us about your new project.
Yeah.
Where can they get it?
Right on the website, just ianethan.com. We've got it there. We'll send you a copy right from the house, and really high quality downloads too, available there. But yeah, it's actually a double disc album. I had a whole bunch of songs that were like just solo acoustic double neck, no looping or any effects or anything. And then all these other songs happened when I started to get into looping that are 100 layers of stuff, a bunch of double neck stuff, a bunch of fretless layers, other guitars, shakers, a little bit of kind of like background vocal harmonies and stuff. And so we kind of split it that way. There's a disc that's all just solo double neck like I'm about to play, and a disc that's all the crazy super layered stuff. And
Beautiful.
It's called Run Toward the Mountains. I feel like I'm just running right now. It's hard for anyone to make a living at doing music, but and for me, just like trying to keep up with. I'm sure everyone can relate. The ideas that are coming, trying to like, it's like you want to hold all that, but you can't because it's infinite. But still trying to get to as much of it as I can, and grateful to get to be working on it. So
fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. absolutely fantastic. Ian, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
What a treat to have you. Anytime you're coming through the Nashville area, let me know. We'd be just so honored to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much. Wonderful series you have going here. Thanks for everything you're doing.
All the best in all your endeavors and concerts and things coming up.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all for joining us. It's been a great night. Keep up the great work in your own learning, and we will be back in 2 weeks. Take care. Keep up the practicing.